Hi, Dave. Are you ready to get started? Good evening. This is the regular Pinole Planning Commission meeting of February 24th, 2025. And I'm going to go ahead and go through the standard steps we go through before formally call it. Oh, wait, no. First, I'm going to call the meeting to order. And now to review the usual stuff. You can attend this meeting in person at the Pinole City Council Chambers, 2131 Paris Street, or by Zoom teleconference. And you can submit comment cards in person via yellow comment card or via Zoom. Go to https://us02web.co.j/86505375301 or to the webinar ID 865-053-75301 or by dialing 1-669-900-6833 or 1-253-215-8782 or 1-346-248-7799. Speakers will be asked to provide their name and city of residence, although providing this is not required for participation. Each speaker will be afforded up to 5 minutes to speak, and speakers will be muted until their opportunity to provide public comment. When I open the comment period for the item you wish to speak on, please use the raise hand feature or press *9 if connecting by telephone, which will alert staff that you have a comment to provide, and press *6 to unmute. To comment with your video enabled, please let staff know you would like to turn your camera on once you are called to speak. If you would like to submit written comments, please submit written comments to planning staff before the meeting via email to dhanham@pinole.gov. Please include your full name, city of residence, and the agenda item you are commenting on. You can also watch the meeting live on Channel 26, or it is retelecast the following week. You can find the Community TV Channel 26 schedule on the city's website at pinole.gov. It's also video streamed live on the city's website, pinole.gov, and will remain archived there for 5 years. If none of those options are available to you or you need assistance with public comment, please contact Planning Manager David Hanham at 510-724-8912 or dhanham@pinole.gov. In compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990, if you need special assistance to participate in a city meeting or you need a copy of the agenda or the agenda packet in an appropriate alternative format, please contact the City Clerk's office at 510-724-8928. Notification at least 48 hours prior to the meeting or time when services are needed will assist the city staff in ensuring that reasonable arrangements can be made to provide accessibility to the meeting or service. Note, staff reports are available for inspection on the city website at www.pinole.gov. You may also contact the City Clerk via email at hbell@pinole.gov. Persons wishing to speak on an item listed on the agenda may do so when I ask for comments in favor of or in opposition to the item under consideration. After all of those persons wishing to speak have done so, the hearing will be closed and the matter will be discussed amongst the Commission prior to rendering a decision. Any person may appeal an action of the Planning Commission or of the Planning Manager by filing an appeal with the City Clerk in writing within 10 days of such action. Following a public hearing, the City Council may act to confirm, modify, or reverse the action of the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission may act to confirm, modify, or reverse the action of the Planning Manager. The cost to appeal a decision is $500 at a minimum $2,500 deposit fee. Note, if you challenge a decision of the Commission regarding a project in court, you may be limited to raising only those issues you or someone else raised at the public hearing or in writing delivered to the City of Pinole at or prior to the public hearing. Ralph N. Brown Act, Government Code Section 54950. In enacting this chapter, the legislature finds and declares that the public commissions, boards, and councils and the other public agencies of this state exist to aid in the conduct of the people's business. It is the intent of the law that their actions be taken openly and that their deliberations be conducted openly. The people of this state do not yield their sovereignty to the agencies which serve them. The people, in delegating authority, do not give their public servants the right to decide what is good for the people to know and what is not good for them to know. The people insist on remaining informed so that they may retain control over the instruments they have created. And now, if you could rise to join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now we have our land acknowledgement. Before we begin, we would like to acknowledge the Ohlone people who are the traditional custodians of this land. We pay our respects to the Ohlone elders, past, present, and future, who call this place Ohlone land, the land that Pinole sits upon, their home. We are proud to continue their tradition of coming together and growing as a community. We thank the Ohlone community for their stewardship and support, and we look forward to strengthening our ties as we continue our relationship of mutual respect and understanding. Roll call. Mr. Hannum, can we have the roll call, please?
Yes. Commissioner Uch.
Present.
Commissioner Huey.
Present.
Commissioner Lamb-Julian.
Present.
Commissioner Sandoval.
Present.
Commissioner Bender.
Present.
Vice Chair Martinez.
Present.
Chair Menes.
Present.
Let the record show that we have a quorum tonight and we can take action on the public hearing tonight. Thank you.
And as usual, I would note that I made ex parte communication with my email list discussing the topics we would discuss this evening. And now we have citizens to be heard. The public may address the Planning Commission on items that are within our jurisdiction and not otherwise listed on the agenda. We may discuss the matter brought to our attention, but by state law and the Ralph M. Brown Act, any action must be deferred to a future meeting. Time allowed is 5 minutes each. Do we have any persons wishing to comment under citizens to be heard?
I see one person online, but I don't see a hand raised yet.
All right, I'll go ahead and wait for,
Okay, there we go. It's a caller with a phone number ending in 5748. Caller, when you're ready, please press *6 to unmute.
Hello, can you hear me?
yes, we can hear you. Can you state your name and city of residence, please?
Yes, my name is Anthony Osbrink, longtime resident, over 40 plus years in the city of Pinole. I was just wanting to commend the planning commissioner and the director planning or manager of planning for being responsive to encourage public engagement during public comment and throughout the meeting, unlike the city council meetings and some other city commissions. Unfortunately, they seem to want to do everything in writing to either silence public comment and or response, or not want to respond in such a way, and they ask that it be put in writing either from the public and or from the city staffers and or for, well, basically the city staffers, directors, or managers. But it's been my experience, as well as talking to others, and I think one or two of you on the commission know that majority of the time they do not respond to you in writing. They do not extend a telephone call back, yet they have your phone number and name and email address usually, but they fail to respond. But anyway, that could be addressed in a different meeting, I guess, at a different time. I just wanted to also ask if you happen to know why the last TAPS meeting was canceled, because the word out was from one of the city assistant staffers that was working last week, the day of, or the day before the scheduled TAPS meeting for the month of February, when myself called, and several other people went down to the meeting that night. They were sadly turned away by locked doors, no postings on the front door or bulletin board at the City Hall building, and no postings on the private television or our television station banner that we pay taxes for, whether that was the responsibility of the city clerk or the assistant clerk. You know, someone has to have some type of accountability there as to what they're supposed to do versus what they actually accomplish. And when I went down there, even the police, I believe the police officer who was going to make a presentation that night or be there in the meeting, Officer Eubanks, he was under the impression there was going to be a meeting, but the city staffer that answered the phone in the next day or that hour of that meeting that never happened said, oh, all the meetings were canceled for the month of February because we're short of staff. So I asked Mr. Dave Hennum, since he's one of the managers or directors there, has that been discussed in a city staff meeting? And how often do you have staff meetings with city council meetings to compare notes and see who's dotting their T's and crossing their I's, so to speak, and with information that should be available to the public or that can be discussed with the public? Because a lot of times we ask questions and the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing, whether it's the
You have
planning
30
commission
seconds remaining.
and or the city council. Also, I would like to ask that, has there been any update to the meeting notes statutes with the planning commission that you can get together to review the statutes for making it easier for businesses to open their doors and get licenses and start a new business in the city of Pinole, and review those policies and procedures that are required, whether it's the cost, the
Can you go ahead
licensing,
and
and
wrap up with
all
the
the different
sentence,
hoops
please?
they have to jump through, like they had in a meeting a few weeks ago in the city of San Ramon, and they're revisiting all their statutes because they have too many retail vacancies. And that being said, we need to do more things to make it easier to bring in new business into the city. And then can the manager update us on what happened in the meeting with the Safeway Tower Hills landlord over there, with the new landlord and or Albertsons?
All right,
A
Mr.
couple weeks
Vosbrink, can you
ago, he
conclude,
said he was
please?
going to be in a meeting. So can he update us on that? Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments?
There are no other comments at this time.
All right, so in that case, Mr. Hennum, do you have any response to any of Mr. Vosbrink's comments?
Just a couple. Regarding the managers' meetings and those, I'm not involved in the department head meetings. I'm just one level lower, so I don't know what gets discussed at those meetings.
I'm not sure, but you have audio live at the moment?
Is this thing on? Okay, here we go. All right, I just got to bring the mic closer. So, Dave, you're probably going to have to turn this down a little bit. Just to let you know that I'm not involved in the managers' meetings. That's department head level. I'm one level down. So I'm not sure what gets discussed at those meetings. And normally I'm not purviewed unless there's something towards me directly that I need to do. So that I'm not sure of how that's going. In terms of the TAPS meetings, Public Works is really short. It's amazing how short a staff they've become just in the last few weeks. Besides I think the director is starting next Monday, but they are losing some staff members in their department. So there's going to be some transition regarding the TAPS and when those meetings are going to be returned. I'm not sure, and who's going to staff those. I'm not sure at this point. So that's probably why they stopped those meetings, at least for the month of February. So So that's all I have for that. In regards to the Safeway, we haven't met with the Safeway people at this point. We are trying to schedule a meeting with them. Any meeting we have with them, because they are a private property owner, are usually confidential. We don't, because there is no project, there is no project on an application that has been proposed. Usually those are meetings that we have with the property owner just to see kind of current updates on those, and we haven't had that yet. So when we get an application, we'll definitely let the Planning Commission know that an application has been filed and what's coming forward. I think that those are the two. Is any kind of got lost in? Is there another one that I'm missing? Mr. Chair, was there another question that?
I think that covers all of it. There
Okay,
was a
good.
sort of broader comment about a staff community disconnect, but that goes beyond what you can answer in the
Yes.
time we have available, I think.
Yep.
So, do any of my fellow commissioners have any statements they'd like to make on the citizens to be heard statement? All right, so with that, we'll go ahead and move on to the meeting minutes. There's one thing that I wanted to double check on and confirm. On page number 9 of the meeting minutes, or page number 13 of 42 of the agenda packet, on lines number 45 and 46, well, really from 44, so it's like the remaining affordable rental units must be affordable to households at or below the low income level, but the underline starts to note down the new text that's being added. Of the 50% must be affordable to households at or below the low income level. It feels like there's some duplicate wording in there. I'm not sure whether that was the final text or what happened there, but I just wanted to double check and make sure that whatever change there was a little bit clearer than that, because it seems like there's a doubled phrase in there at least.
Well, basically what it's saying is that the original stuff that's in italics was the original wording of the section 17.320, and then there's a colon that basically modifies from the sentence the remaining affordable income rental units, and then the underlined is what's added of the 15% must be affordable. So what happened was we included what was said and then what was changed in the same paragraph. So maybe if we just like do maybe we can include something that says, or a space, like maybe just a space down, so you can, and this would be new text and something like that nature. But that's all that is.
Right. I mean, I get that that's the new text as opposed to the stuff that was above it. I'm more confused about the wording, because when we're saying the remaining affordable rental units must be affordable to households at or below the low income level, and then of the 15% must be affordable to households at or below the low income level. Like, wouldn't it make more sense to say the remaining affordable rental units of the 15% must be affordable? Because right now it looks like you basically have a trailing clause there. I mean, if that's what we ended up agreeing on, that's what we ended up agreeing on, but it seems awkward.
Yeah, I do agree. It does seem awkward. It does discuss text that was in our proposed municipal code amendments. So I think even if it's not completely clear here, it would be clear in the zoning code amendment text, if that helps. But I think the clause is essentially trying to convey that because of our affordable housing requirement, 15% has to be set as the minimum affordability for the number of base units provided in a housing development project. 40% of that 15% must be affordable to very low income, and the remaining percentage would be affordable to, remaining percentage of that 15% would be affordable to low income. And that's for the rental projects. For the ownership projects, It's also 15% affordable units, but 100% of that 15% can be affordable to moderate income.
Right, I've got no problem with
Yeah.
that sentence. That one works right. Would it be possible to strike the must be the first, basically, so have it read the remaining affordable rental units of the 15%, so strike the first must be affordable to households at or below the low income level, because it's just entirely duplicative if I'm reading that right.
Affordable units must be affordable. I think we could strike that. I'm not sure if there's a missing sentence before that that specifies 40% of the 15% must be very low income.
I think that that's the way it works, because we're just revising the sentence after that, where it starts the remaining, and then it's the remaining affordable rental units. I bet it would make more sense just to have that go straight to of the 15%, rather than have the whole clause before it. Would it be possible to do that, to just strike that segment in the minutes and then make the needed adjustments elsewhere?
Yeah, I think so. And of course, the actual wording in the, ordinance would be in the ordinance itself, so that provides
Right.
clarity. It's just, the phrasing here, I guess, could use some clarification.
Yeah, we just need to make sure we're not amending what we, as part of the ordinance, or that we're taking language out, that this is just a snippet of what the ordinance says.
Right, I don't think it would change anything about the actual meaning. It would just improve clarity.
Right.
So I guess I would make a motion to amend the minutes as I described, basically striking the phrase must be affordable to households, the first phrase must be affordable to households at or below the low income level on lines number 44 and 45 of page 9 of the minutes. Do I have a second?
Did everybody else have any changes to the minutes, or?
I figured we'd start with my motion, and then if anybody else had changes they wanted to make, then they could make their own motions.
Okay.
So do I have a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Wouldn't we need to approve the minutes as a whole?
From how I understand the motions process, we can make motions to amend the minutes and then have a final motion to adopt the minutes as amended.
Yeah, but why wouldn't we just do one motion at the end with all the amendments?
Seems simpler to do it one item at a time, but I'm open to having it just be one final motion covering everything.
I guess I'm not opposed to that. Just thinking it might be more efficient just to do them all
Okay.
in one big motion.
Well, in
at
that
the end.
case, I'll withdraw my motion for now. And does anybody else have any other amendments they would like to make to the minutes? All right, in that case, I'll restate my motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, having a motion and a second, is there any further discussion? All right, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Uch,
Yes.
Commissioner Huey,
Yes.
Commissioner Lamb-Julian,
Yes.
Commissioner Sandoval,
Yes.
Commissioner Bender,
Yes.
Vice Chair Martinez,
Abstain.
and Chair Menace.
Yes.
Motion carries 601 with one abstention. Motion carries.
All right, and that was that a motion to adopt with the amendment, or was that just the motion to amend?
That was a motion to approve and amend the minutes.
Okay, so it was adopt and amend, got it.
Yes.
Just wanted to double check and make sure. All right, our next item is a public hearing. So some more paperwork involved with that one. At the beginning of the item, I'll read the description of the item as stated on the agenda. City staff will then give a brief presentation of the proposed project. The commission may then ask staff questions about the item. For the items listed as public hearings, I will open the public hearing and ask the applicant if they wish to make a presentation. Those persons in favor of the project will then be given an opportunity to speak, followed by those who are opposed to the project. The applicant will then be given an opportunity for rebuttal. The public hearing will then be closed. The commission may discuss the item among themselves and ask questions of staff. The commission will then vote to approve, deny, approve in a modified form, or continue the matter to a later date for a decision. I will announce the commission's decision and advise the audience of the appeal procedure. No public hearings will begin after 11 p.m. Items still remaining on the agenda after 11 p.m. will be held over to the next meeting. As the time is currently 7:27 p.m., we can begin this hearing. The item we are going to be discussing is PA 25-0002, Accessory Dwelling Unit Amnesty Program. So, Mr. Shu, if you could give the presentation, please.
All right, absolutely. Thank you, Chair Menes, and good evening, Planning Commissioners. The item before you tonight is another municipal code amendment, but this one is for an amnesty program for accessory dwelling units that were previously constructed without a permit. If we could go to the next slide. So about the ADU amnesty program, this would be setting up standards and steps that residents, owners, applicants could go through in order to legalize units that were previously constructed without permits. This includes different procedures like step-by-step as outlined in the staff report, and also some municipal code amendments so that the ordinance requirements are captured in our municipal code. So this ADU amnesty program, ADUs being accessory dwelling units and JADUs being junior accessory dwelling units, are accessory units to a primary unit on each individual property. These could be single-family residential properties. It could be multifamily properties as well. JADUs, of course, just are part of single-family residential properties. But the point being that sometimes these units are constructed without obtaining the proper building permit applications or certificates of occupancy, and the ADU amnesty program allows owners a pathway to be able to legalize their unit and also get it inspected to ensure they're safe, and which helps adds to the city's housing stock as well. ADU amnesty provisions have been part of state law for a little while, but the latest update was in 2024, September 2024, AB 2533 was adopted. It provided some new updates to state laws, and then we're incorporating all of those updates plus state law into our code as well, and establishing some procedures. Some notable updates. It established, this is notable updates from that state bill. So it established an extension to the eligibility. Previously, units needed to be constructed before January 2018. With the update, it's now January 1st, 2020. So if you have a unit constructed before then that didn't have permits, you might be eligible for this program. Additional updates include health and safety updates. This is a clarification on units in how to evaluate units that are eligible for this program in terms of what's allowed into the program. So it limits enforcement on violations that pose a safety risk. So if the unit isn't meeting health and safety code standards under this section 17920.3, it would not be eligible to participate in this program. Previously, state law had more general phrasing that the unit would be a hazard to health and safety. With the update, it provided more specific standards so owners could know specifically what the substandard conditions are under health and safety code 17920.3. And then under this update, it also established, I think the approach was to provide more information for the public to be able to, access and utilize ADU amnesty provisions. Even though it was in state law, the new updates provide some noticing requirements for owners that want to participate in the program. So if a person was caught with a unit that wasn't legally permitted before, they would be informed that there is an amnesty pathway now to be able to participate in this program. Part of this notification is also letting owners know that they're also eligible to have a third-party inspector inspect their home before diving deep into this permit process, so they know what they're working with. And also having this notification could potentially reduce some penalties. Penalties being it could be otherwise a code enforcement case, which would be a cost to the owner. There is some cost in unpermitted construction, and having this amnesty pathway incentivizes people legalizing their units. And then also there is an enforcement delay as well of up to 5 years to address violations. So if you're eligible to participate in this program, any code enforcement actions could potentially be deferred up to 5 years. So you could have up to 5 years to get everything in line for your unit. The ADU amnesty program is part of our housing element programs as well. Housing element program 4 includes a facilitating ADU production. As Planning Commission might remember, we adopted some ordinance updates in order to bring our ADU ordinance up to date with state requirements. And then also as part of this program, we also committed to adopting the city's own ADU amnesty program as well. So this would be implementing that part of our housing element program. Just as a note, I think many of the permit applications to legalize units come in because of discovery of unpermitted construction. So this might be like an owner that bought a new house, but found out that the previous owner like built all these things without proper permits, or perhaps like a neighbor discovered that there's some construction going on in their backyard, and they weren't able to legalize those units. So I think a lot of the units that come in that were unpermitted come in because of like unintentional discovery. With this new program, it does provide owners with incentive to seek a pathway to legalize their units without excessive penalties, and that encourages participation in providing additional units and ensuring the units are constructed safely and according to standards. If we could go to the next slide. So units would be reviewed based on building standards. According to state law, the city cannot deny a permit for an unpermitted ADU or JDU constructed before January 1st, 2020, based on violation of state and local building standards. There are some exceptions, the exceptions being, they need to comply with health and safety code standards for what's considered like substandard housing. So the units can't be considered substandard housing, which is defined further in section 1790, 920.3. So if those conditions apply, then the owner would need to make corrections in order to address like substandard building conditions. And just as a couple of examples, this is drawn from that section. Substandard building conditions include like inadequate sanitation, structural standards. There are nuisances, faulty wiring, plumbing issues, mechanical equipment related, faulty weather protection, conditions that might lead to a fire, materials that aren't allowed in the code, condition of the premise, would result in hazards or constitute a hazard. There's inadequate maintenance. There's inadequate exits. The applicable fire resistive requirements aren't met. It's occupied for living, occupied as a living unit, but not designed for use as a living unit, and inadequate structural resistance to horizontal forces. So like lateral forces, these are described in more detail in that section, but this just kind of provides a general overview of like what substandard building conditions might fall under. And as part of this amnesty program, it's providing information, including new checklists for owners and designers to use in order to check what the substandard conditions would be. And it opens up a process for people to seek confidential consultation with city staff as well. So if you come to city staff, we won't bust you and like open a code enforcement case on you because you came in asking about like wanting to get your unit legalized and wanting to participate in the amnesty program. If we could go to the next slide. So we covered some of these aspects, but I'll just repeat some of these aspects of this program. So enforcement is delayed for a period of up to 5 years. When the correction isn't related to health and safety requirements under the health and safety code. So an example of that is, if the ceiling is slightly below the local building code requirement, so being like 6 feet, 7 feet instead of 7.5, that could be allowable. Although it's not meeting current building code, the building inspector would determine that that might be sufficient. So slight differences in local building code would be allowable. What would not be allowable would be like faulty wiring, inadequate like fire egress, or unsafe plumbing for the unit. And this would also be reviewed against that health and safety code section to determine like what is substandard housing and whether the housing condition falls into those categories. The program would provide support for owners and designers seeking to utilize the program, so including a self-assessment checklist. An example of the checklist was provided in the Planning Commission packet. It's one of the last attachments. I believe it's attachment C. The city is currently working on that. Our building official, as well as our building inspector, would be preparing the city's own list. But as an example, we provide the city of Berkeley's list as one that they identified as a pretty good example to go by. There would be online resources available for people seeking to participate in the program, including this checklist, staff contact. Our permitting system is also online as well, so people could go online to obtain resources. We'll probably have more information on the ADU amnesty program online as well, so they could see what the steps are and what they should look for in legalizing their units. We mentioned confidential consultation, so staff is available to consult with people interested in participating in this program without fear that that they're seeking help would lead to like a code enforcement case on them with this respect. And also just letting people participating in the program know that they could seek an optional third-party inspector to help the property owners address potential issues before submitting an application. The third-party inspector, of course, wouldn't be affiliated with the city. It would be someone that the property owner or designer hires themselves, so they could review the conditions of the site without like city participation. So they would know like what's been developed that's substandard, not according to the building code. So they can make their own independent judgment on whether to pursue the program, whether to try to legalize the unit, to demolish it, what have you. So it would be notifying people that this is part of the process they should consider before going further into the permitting process. If we could go to the next slide. So if someone does apply for this amnesty program, they'll be under an amnesty permit. This includes 2 city inspections to be able to verify that if you're participating in the program, that the unit is meeting the standards that aren't substandard. So this would include, city inspections, and corrections would be needed if the city inspector goes out and finds that there are like substandard conditions. They would need to correct those. Code enforcement is delayed up to 5 years in order to for them to meet the standards without any immediate penalties. So any code enforcement case would be put on stay. There wouldn't be action on it for 5 years as long as you're actively participating in the program, making the corrections needed in terms of obtaining permits and then like going through with the remaining construction. And to participate, owners need to provide documentation proving that they've occupied the unit, they constructed the unit. This includes like utility bills, could be a written affidavit from people verifying that you've lived there, that it was constructed before January 1st, 2020. Applications would be accepted until January 1st, 2030. This lines up with the state sunsetting dates, which is also January 1st, 2030, and all enforcement delays would conclude January 1st, 2035. If we could go to the next slide. So the program benefits, it increases availability of affordable housing by incorporating previously unpermitted units. It enhances safety by ensuring that these units are complying with health and safety standards, and encourages voluntary compliance from people seeking to benefit from this program, and minimizing the need for costly enforcement actions and fostering collaboration. If we could go to the next slide. So to outline the general process, it's a 10-step process I think that we've conceptualized. The first being that the owner determines whether their unit might be eligible. So they would know the date of construction, whether it's a functional unit or not. The owner would then be able to conduct a self-assessment themselves. They would use the checklist that would be made available to identify eligibility, any concerns. We'd inform them to seek a third-party inspection as an option. The owners will hire a contractor for that inspection, and then that would help inform where they go with the next steps. They could also request a free consultation with city staff. It's a confidential meeting to review eligibility, gather information, and provide some guidance on next steps in their application. And after taking all of that in and considering, the owner could determine whether they want to submit an application, so they would complete an amnesty permit application. If we go to the next slide. City inspections would be next. Once they do submit a formal application, the building inspector would go out to conduct an initial review of the unit to verify that there aren't any health and safety violations. If there are, they would need to be corrected. And then inspection 2 is a follow-up after corrections if needed. Additional inspections are available, even though we've conceptualized 2. If additional are needed, they would be available as well at the city's general rate for inspections. Step 7 is to address violations if applicable. These are related to health and safety during this process. Step 8, enforcement is delayed for up to 5 years if it's not related to a health and safety risk. Finally, if you get through all of that and your plans are approved, you'll get final approval. The ADU would be granted amnesty and deemed compliant with standards. And of course, this program is available currently until January 1st, 2030, with enforcement delays ending in January 1st, 2035. Of course, state law could be updated in the meantime, in which case the sunsetting period could be extended, but currently we're meeting the current standards. If we could go to the next slide. So that provides kind of an overview. So the recommendation is to adopt Resolution 25-02, Attachment A, recommending to the City Council the adoption of the proposed municipal code amendments provided in Resolution 25-02, Attachment A, Exhibit A, with any recommendations that Planning Commission might have on revisions. So with that, that concludes the presentation, and staff is available for any questions or comments.
Thank you, Mr. Hsu. So I'm going to go ahead and go through my fellow commissioners, ask if they have any questions about this item, starting with Commissioner Sandoval. Do you have any questions?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, I did have a few questions for staff. The first one's just a little bit more out of curiosity. What would kind of happen if a unit is found to be substandard after the sunset? What kind of enforcement actions would the city take if they're not corrected?
I think after the sunset, assuming that it's not renewed by the state for whatever
Yes.
reason, I think it'd probably roll over into like a regular code enforcement case in order to bring it to compliance and making sure that they are meeting like health and safety standards.
Do you know what that would imply for the unit? Would it actually need to be demolished, or would they be fined, or kind of like a step process?
I guess it would be a case-by-case basis. They would need to meet current building code standards at that time.
Okay.
So depending on like the extent of whatever was constructed, it could be like a modification or it could be like demolition.
Okay.
So
Sounds good.
Yeah, no matter what, they would still have to make it legal or at least code compliant. So we're giving them through the amnesty program, we're giving them that rebate, that cut. But if they don't do it, if they say no, we're going to do it, and then later on, then they'd have to come back, pay full boat for all. But they're still going to have to make the repairs or make the changes. And if they don't, then yes, it could lead all the way to demolition if that's the case. But that's why this program, we hope people will take advantage of this program.
yeah, the amnesty does allow for a little flexibility and like strict application of the building code, but they still do need to comply with health and safety code standards.
Thank you. Yes, and then I had a second question. The bill also looks. Oh, it looks like. Oh,
Yeah, you're okay.
okay. Sorry about that. Yes, I had another question. It looks like the bill also kind of requires public notice and notification from the city. What kind of communication would the city be putting out?
Yeah, it's not public notice in the traditional sense of like a public hearing type of notice, since
Yeah.
this would still fall under a building permit or like an administrative permit, which doesn't typically have notification. I think noticing is framed in the way that we would provide notice and information to the owner or the person participating in the program, letting them know like what the eligibility is, what options there are, including like the checklist that's available, and like, being able to seek out third-party inspection, consultation with staff. So it's notice in the way that we provide additional information to owners and applicants.
Would that information be on like the city's? I'm assuming that also be on the city's website, but would it also be like the city would also kind of be looking around neighborhoods, seeing, oh, that we see a ADU that might not be permitted?
I don't think so. Part of that's just
Valid question.
practicability. We have one code enforcement officer, and it'll be hard for her to drive around and
Right.
provide notices. Hopefully, word does spread about the program a bit, so people could look at any potential unpermitted construction and seeing if it might meet standards to be legalized. We'll put information on the website, and there might be some email notification, other sorts of notification that the city typically sends out. But yeah, there's no traditional like meeting notification.
Okay. Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, those are all the questions for me, and thank you for the presentation.
All right, Commissioner Lam-Julia, do you have any questions for staff?
Just one question. What is the city's hourly inspection rate?
It's a good question. I don't have it offhand, but I could try to look it up.
Okay, and then do we have a target date of when the city kind of anticipates of having our own version of the checklist?
It's probably going to be in the next few months or so. I do know that our ordinance update packages are going to City Council, I believe, next week on the 4th, including this amnesty program for review. Building staff has been working on the checklist. I think it's close to releasing, so it might be in a month or two, maybe a little more, but it might coincide with like when all of these ordinances are updated and like put out on the website. So.
Okay, and then final question. I know I said I only had one. I know we're going to be updating the website. Then would staff be able to have like a one-pager flyer of just about the program and just the steps of just, hey, just as a reference for the community?
I think so, and we could talk to our community development director. She was spearheading a lot of this, and she might already have that prepared. But I think the goal is to provide some information that's accessible to people who might be interested.
Okay, thank you. I'm complete.
All right, Vice Chair Martinez, do you have any questions for staff?
Thank you, Chair. I do have a few questions tonight. Justin, do we have a rough idea of the number of ADUs and junior additional dwelling units that we have in Pinole, or do we have a projection of how many we might have, would be the first question. So that just would help us to have a better understanding of how many units we're trying to bring into compliance. Mm-hmm. And then are we also trying to capture the amount of rental pricing on these units so that way we have a good idea of, are we really meeting the affordability requirements as set forth by the state for the different income brackets? Mm-hmm. Any information on that would be helpful. Then moving along to page 28 of 42, under the section where it says fee waivers for affordable ADUs, there's a reference to an item P as in Paul, L as in lion, H as in house, A as in Adam, or other funding sources. What does that PLA or other funding sources mean? Can you elaborate on that, please?
Can you repeat the section or item number?
Sure. It was on page 28 of 42.
8, okay.
And it's under the item fee waivers for affordable ADUs.
Oh, okay.
And it's my question is, what is that PLA or other funding sources? What's that in reference to? Because it's just an acronym. Mm-hmm. It would be helpful to have that defined a little more clearly, please.
Okay. I actually don't recall off the top of my head what the PLHA is.
Okay. Did you want me to read you all my questions, or individually how would you like to address these?
Oh, either one. Did you have additional questions?
Just a couple more.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, please continue.
Then on page 32 of 42, we were talking about structural construction, and obviously there's different types of construction, raised, concrete slab. And what I generally seen here in Pinole is that we have a lot of land movement, right? Mm-hmm. Are we also, from a health and safety standpoint, having somebody review those foundations to make sure that they are solid? Or can we make sure that we add that as an item for review? Especially because I've seen a number of homes up in the valley that are currently undergoing their slabs being replaced just because of traditional land movement. Then, so if we could look into that and add that as an item, that might be helpful. And then my last question is on page 37 of 42, and that's fire safety access is the title of the section. and it's the section where it says, is the ADU located within 150 feet of public right-of-way? And so I guess if we could tee that up a little bit more clearly, did we require that our ADUs be, the setback, is that a 15-foot setback? Is it 150 feet? We need to spell out specifically what the setbacks need to be. So any guidance from your team to clarify that would be really appreciated. And that would be all of my questions. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, yeah. Thank you, Vice Chair Martinez. Happy to go through some of these points, and feel free to bring something up if I missed something. So I think the first question was about the number of ADUs in the city. We can get that number. I don't have it off the top of my head. But of course, these are the legalized ADUs, or legal ADUs, right? ADUs that have come in to get a permit through the regular process. We could track those. It's the unpermitted ones that we're not really sure like how many are out there. And part of the goal of this program is to like bring some of those units out in order to legalize them and provide a pathway to additional housing units that could be utilized and meet standards in terms of health and safety. I think just anecdotally, there might be like a couple that come in through the regular building permit process in order to be legalized. Some of these come in because they've been reported by code enforcement, or some other process in which the owner discovers that their unit wasn't actually legally constructed before. So I think it's pretty common for like maybe like 1 or 2 units per year to be requesting legalization just through the regular building permit process. There might be more out there since people might be caught doing construction, or people bought their home intending to do new construction now, but realized that the previous owner never got permits to do the work that is actually in their house. So it's hard to say like how many units might be out there that don't have permits. So part of the intent of this program is to bring those out, but there could be a number out there. Let's see. In terms of whether we're like meeting projections, I believe our housing element sets a target of like 3 to 5 ADUs per year as an average, and we're currently meeting that standard with more participation in this program and just like general interest from the public. I think that number could go up as well. I think we've been able to exceed our projections just based on the past couple years or so, and just there's been continuing interest. Again, anecdotally from people just calling into the department asking about, doing ADUs and what's possible. Let's see, in terms of, I think you mentioned the PLHA. If I'm recalling correctly, I think it might have to do with Pinole's low-income housing fund.
I was just going to say
Yeah.
that's what it is. It's the Pinole Low Housing Fund. It's a grant that we received, or we're in the process of applying for, or we've received it. I'm not one of those two, that will allow for some additional funding for some of these.
Yeah.
So that's yeah.
And I might be also confusing that with our successor fund as well. Pinole previously had a redevelopment agency. Some of the funding transferred over when redevelopment was done away with in the early 2000s. It might reference that fund as well. But I think, yeah.
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
We expended all
That's
of
there.
we expended those
Okay, there you go.
with Saha.
Let's see, I think there was a question about reviewing the foundations in order to make sure they're solid. The building inspectors would go out to review foundations. If someone does participate in this program, they'll make sure it's meeting the health and safety guidelines. As part of the typical building permit process, they also look at foundations to make sure they're appropriate for the type of structure that's being put on top of either ungraded areas, or if it's already a poured slab, whether that's appropriate for the structure. So as part of the building permit review, it is considered for new construction, legalization, what have you. And then you mentioned also fire safety in the checklist, page 37. This is about an ADU, is the ADU located within 100 feet of the public right-of-way? That is a standard that actually Contra Costa Fire Protection Authority also uses, and I'm sure like other like fire departments use. This is to assess the distance from the ADU to like the curb in order to make sure the fire trucks have enough access and have enough distance to reach the ADU. So That's why they put the 150-foot standard there. If they might be more than 150 square feet, they might be required to do other fire improvements, which might include sprinklers or whatever the fire department requires.
Yeah, and if I can add to that too, Justin, that's a con fire, because in most cases they want to be within 150 feet of a fire hydrant. However, most lots are within 150 feet of a fire hydrant, and these will be the rear of the lot. So they just want to make sure that the ADU isn't outside that 150 feet, and it's mainly for the lot. So if it's in a back corner or something of that nature, most of our lots are pretty standard 6,000 square foot lots. We don't really have a lot of big lots where these ADUs are sitting way in the back on a 2-acre lot or something like that. So, and that's where, yeah, if it is more than 150 feet, then potentially something would have to be done, either some type of either sprinklers or some other type of fire suppression would have to take place if it was outside the 150 feet. So,
Excellent. And through the chair, if I can just clarify one other question. It went back to the very kind of at the beginning. If we were, during the application process, capturing the rental pricing to make sure that we were doing our best as a city to capture low income, moderate income, to make sure we're in compliance with the state guidelines. Mm-hmm. So if during the application process, if we knew what those were, that might help all of us make sure that we're delivering the right amounts of units as required by state law.
Okay. Yeah, and that's a good point, Vice Chair. I think we're already in the process of doing something similar, creating like a survey form or something along those lines for people applying, just to understand like what the affordability levels are. I think in the past we've just considered ADUs as like market rate units, but if people are like renting them out for lower, like it would help like substantiate, being able to count those as our like lower income units. Regardless of whether they're counted or not, the city did prepare their housing element and did identify that, we're, on track to meet our RENA if everything's built out. There is some shortage on the very low and moderate income side, and perhaps some of these units might be able to meet those, but even if not, I think, based on our current approved projects and projects like in the pipeline, we're making good progress, I think, on our housing needs.
Excellent. That would cover all of my questions, team. Thank you.
Thank you. And I guess sort of two brief questions I have following up on Vice Chair Martinez's. First, I think that PLHA, from what I can identify, is the Permanent Local Housing Allocation Program, which is a fund source, I guess, provided by the State Department of Housing and Community Development. I'm assuming that's what's referred to. And the second thing I wanted to inquire a bit more about was with regards to basically affordability waivers. It seems like the fee waivers are a separate clause from the amnesty program, so that's on page 28 of 42 here. So to sort of follow up on Vice Chair Martinez's question, does the amnesty program require any level of affordability or any affordability covenant as part of the amnesty process, or is that just completely outside of that system?
Okay, yeah, thanks for bringing that up again, Chair. Sorry, I missed that question earlier. This would be outside of the amnesty program. I think there are provisions in just state law or actually HGD guidance that we can't actually like deed restrict ADUs for like, as affordable units. They could be, let's see. Yeah, I guess they could apply for fee waivers, but this section is separate from the ADU amnesty program. It's just another program for evaluation under Program 4.
Got it. Just wanted to follow up on that question. So with that, Commissioner Hui, do you have any questions for staff?
Yeah, thank you. So the wording for the enforcement delay says it's up to 5 years. Are there tiers to the number of years for delay depending on the violation, or is it 5 years across the board?
It would be 5 years across the board.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. And then building off of Commissioner Sandoval's question about oversight, will the city be sending any reminders during the interim 5-year period, perhaps the year before or halfway through, to remind folks of that their 5 years is up?
Yeah, I believe so. Just to keep folks on track, hopefully. It's common with like most of our building permits that people continue to make progress through them. Of course, if there isn't progress, I think our permit technicians would kind of catch that. But I think in participating in this program, the planning division would also be involved as well. So hopefully that provides some additional monitoring to make sure people, are within their timeframes.
Thank you. And I didn't get the opportunity to read too much into the Pinole Energy Rebate Program, but would these ADUs potentially be eligible for that?
Yeah, I think so. They're not separate, so I think people could also qualify for utilizing that program.
Okay, and I know we're running on a timeline for the Pinole Energy Rebate Program, but assuming that this amnesty program goes live before then, would the Pinole Energy Rebate Program be hyperlinked or placed somewhere where folks can easily find that accessible?
That's a good idea. We will bring that up to our planning director
Thank
or
you very
community
much.
development director.
And then my last question is building off of Vice Chair Martinez's question about pricing and affordability. Is there any mechanism in place to prevent landlords from using this process to raise rents after legalizing the ADUs?
I don't believe so. There isn't anything in state law specifically like establishing that type of standard, so it is hard to enforce. Hopefully, people legalizing these units. Many ADUs could be considered like, affordable by design since they are smaller units. Of course, people could rent them out for exorbitant amounts, especially in the Bay Area. But I think by their nature, they are typically like lower cost than, renting out like an apartment or, a single family home. There's no specific program to be able to establish people have to rent it out at certain rates, I think.
Okay.
So it is a challenge, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Hooch, do you have any questions for staff?
Yes, I do. One question I have on page 28 for the attachments on ADU tracking. So when it comes to like data on tracking ADU process, will that information eventually, once, we have ADUs built and like a catalog built up, will that be like available for the public to access just for curiosity and say for studies of like, oh, during this X amount of time, this amount of ADU is available?
That's a good question. I think we'll continue to look into that. People, of course, could make public records requests in case they are curious about, what the ADU development rate has been. I think we are also looking at potential software that might be associated with ADUs as a means of like providing information for ADUs, but potentially this could also show like where ADUs have been developed as well, or areas that are eligible for ADUs. So I don't think we have anything currently that's publicly available, but we would be welcome to questions about what the development has been like.
Got it. And another question I have related to, I guess, when ADUs or like when people want their ADUs to be have gained amnesty, that will be cataloged into the ADU tracking, right? Or they'll be officially cataloged when they're fully legalized, right?
Yeah, they would be counted as just like standard like ADUs, except they are under this amnesty program. So they would be under this amnesty permit. They would have a specific, probably like planning or building application number to be able to recognize that these were developed under the amnesty program. So there might be some like standards that are a little different from like typical building code standards, but it would recognize that these were developed under that amnesty program, if that answers your question.
Okay, yeah, that actually, you answered my other question. So
Okay.
basically with the ADU tracking, it'll also create a differentiation of ADUs that have been legalized through the amnesty program and ADUs that just been built
It's the
basically
standard.
to like, regular standard ADUs.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's one of my questions. And my one more question I do have is like from 26, a little bit leading to 27 on section on for the assessor records of showing proof of the ADU being built before basically January 1st, 2020. And it shows like the different records a person could use. They don't have to show like all what I'm seeing, like, let's say from all the different types, right? Like what from B to F, right?
Right. Are
Which
you
is
looking
like
at
rental records, income tax records, utility bills, contractor bills, or just written affidavits? It could at least be one of them, right?
Yeah, it could be one of them. It might be like a couple of them if we need to cross-reference, but you don't need to provide like everything, I suppose.
Got it. And I'm guessing like if you do have everything, the process would be slightly faster, right? Because you just have a bit more
yeah,
evidence,
I guess
or it's like
yeah,
case
it
by
would,
case.
It would be more evidence, so it would help bolster the case.
Got it. That's all my questions. And thank you.
Yeah, I think and/or usually indicates basically choose one from the options rather than choose all, but that could be made clearer, I think, in the final text. Commissioner Bender, do you have any questions for staff on this item?
Yeah, I just have one question, and actually it was related to that, about the assessor's records. I'm a little confused, and maybe staff can confuse me, because I would think that the assessor's office would only know about a building being on a piece of property when someone files a building permit.
Sometimes.
Yeah, please clarify.
It's because sometimes what happens is like, and mainly with like in-house construction, when they do, they'll report it. The property owner, for whatever reason, will report it to the assessor. And then if they move or whatever, then they would just kind of remove everything to not count it. So the assessor, and I just went around the corner there. Sometimes it gets reported to the assessor that there's additional structures on the property. Now, there might not be in most cases, it'd be some type of accessory structure or something like that. That could get reported, but not necessarily being a living unit. So what we would look at is are there other structures that the assessor has on the property? In most cases, they won't have it, but in some cases, they do have accessory structures if they're required to get permits, i.e. a tough shed that's over 120 square feet. They're required to get a permit. That would then get reported. Or, and that's usually what will happen, they'll do a shed permit and then over the course of years, turn it into an ADU. And then, so it got reported as part of a shed. So that's where it would get reported to the assessors. Okay. If it required a permit from its original building.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And then I have a few questions. So while we're still on page number 26 of 42, section 17.70.070, when you have B, eligibility and owner rights, the owner of an unpermitted junior/accessory dwelling unit has a right to request, 1, the owner of an unpermitted junior/accessory dwelling unit has a right to request. That seems like a duplicate. Is there a reason we have both B and 1 there?
That might be a duplicate, actually. Yeah, I think that might be a duplicate. It could be that B originally was just eligibility and owner rights with the 1 after it as the listing. So we could probably strike that or recommend that to be.
Or what we could do is just renumber and just instead of 1A, delete that, and those become 1 and 2 or something of that nature. We can just if it's.
I think the chair is mentioning like the redundant text.
Right.
Yeah.
But then you would have to renumber. Yeah. If you take it out, you would have to renumber it.
Wouldn't be that huge a renumbering, though.
No, just be that big.
Okay, so that was my first question. And then my next question was, so on page number 27 of 42, under enforcement actions, it says, for A, you can request amnesty for performance standard violations in PMC section 17.70.40 for units established and occupied before January 1st, 2020. And then right below that, B says you can request a delay in enforcement of building code or related local amendments for units built before the effective date of this section. So how much of what would fall under Section B also falls under Section A?
There could be some overlap. Section A is mostly, I believe, relevant to like zoning standards for ADUs, where Section B, I think, is related more to the building code. So there could be some overlap there in terms of like setbacks and other requirements.
Right, because I think just as sort of a naive looking at this, people are going to look at it and see, oh, hey, if I have this built before January 1st, 2020, then I have this amnesty, and that means I don't need to go through the whole request for delay in enforcement and so on and so forth, as opposed to if it was built between January 1st, 2020 and whenever the effective date of this section is. But I think you're saying that would be an inaccurate way to look at this. Is that right?
Let's see if I'm understanding it correctly. The only units that would qualify for the amnesty program would be built before January 1st, 2020. Anything afterwards wouldn't be eligible and would have to be evaluated based on just normal building code procedures.
Right. I guess what I'm trying to clarify is sort of the scope of the amnesty. I know that A says it's for performance standard violations in PMC section 17.70.40. But it feels like when we're saying amnesty versus delay that people are going to interpret amnesty as broader unless we're really explicit about it being like, let me go ahead and have a look back at the staff report, for example. So on page number 20, there's a whole process for the amnesty program, which a lot of that isn't directly in the text of the ordinance. I guess most of it just falls under the city shall provide support and resources segment of the text rather than going through all of this line by line. But
Well, also, if you look above on page 27 of 42, it talks about enforcement delay. So it kind of defines what that delay is. And so basically what they're saying is as part of the enforcement action, if you're requesting a delay in enforcement of the building code related to the local units, it's similar, then you would refer back up to number 2, which they may request a delay in enforcement for building code violations for units built prior to the effective date in the form and manner prescribed by the CDD or their designee. And then the building code enforcement delay shall be for a period of no more than 5 years. So pretty much we're saying that they're allowing them, if they just need a request of delay in enforcement, we're giving them up to 5 years to get it done.
right.
As long as it doesn't have, public health and safety, then they've got to do it right now.
Right. I mean, I get the enforcement delay section. That's clear enough if people are requesting a delay in enforcement for building code violations. But by default, for enforcement actions, it looks like there's basically 2 segments, one of which is the amnesty for performance standard violations, and the other of which is enforcement of the building code. And I think that by default, unless the language of sort of the public-facing part of this ordinance, not the text of the ordinance. The text seems clear enough, but the staff report and things like that has made clear that the amnesty only applies to a narrow subset of basically potential municipal code violations that people might think, oh, it also applies to all the building code stuff. Even though that's not what the text of the ordinance says. It's sort of what I guess this is getting a bit more into a comment, but I'm worried that the public might view it that way by default.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think what might help is when we do put that building checklist up, the pre-submittal checklist, so they could review like what are considered substandard conditions, because there are like specific things that the new unit can't fall under in terms of like substandard housing.
Right. And then my next question was still on page 27 here under penalties. So it says penalties related to zoning or building violations shall be waived during the amnesty and enforcement delay periods. So that just applies to the ADUs and JADUs, right? It doesn't apply to any zoning or building violation whatsoever.
No, it refers to the ADU and the JADU.
Okay, just wanted to be sure that it was more narrowly contained. Let's see. All right, I think that's all my questions for staff on this item. A lot of the questions I had were already addressed by my fellow commissioners. Thank you for that. So at this point, I will now go ahead and formally open the public hearing. The time being 8:18, it is before 11 p.m. Does the applicant wish to make an additional presentation?
No, thank you, Chair.
All right, are there any persons wishing to speak in favor of this project?
I don't see anyone online right now.
Are there any persons wishing to speak in opposition to this project?
Also, no one online right now.
All right, given that, I will now close the public hearing. And the commission can now discuss the item among ourselves. So I'll go in the other direction this time. Commissioner Bender, do you have any comments on this item?
Being brought forward. I will say this, I will sort of feel sorry for the building department officials because to the point of Commissioner Martinez bringing up the issue about the concrete slabs, I'm not quite sure. Well, I do know actually how you do determine whether something was built, if it was required to have a 1-hour rated wall, how you actually make that determination, i.e. it's cutting open the wall, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know how you verify foundations if there were no documentation of it, other than you start core drilling or something like that to see if there's rebar in there or what have you. I do kind of feel sorry for the building department officials having to go through that on that portions of that checklist that you guys will be developing. It'll be a task.
Yeah, the foundation, I think what they're probably will be looking for is more cracks. Do they see cracks? Do they see those types of things? And if they do, then,
No.
you know, if the slab, if it's on a slab and the slab is clean, I think they'll be okay. But yeah, you're right. If they start noticing cracks and, you know, that it's just on blocks, you know, or whatever, yeah.
Some things are obvious, some things are hidden.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
one will never know
No.
without the construction documents.
Right.
But again, I think it's something that is definitely needed, sorely needed in the community. That is it.
All right, Commissioner Uch, do you have any comments on this item?
No comment.
All right, Commissioner Hui, do you have any comments on this item?
I do not, thank you.
Vice Chair Martinez, do you have any comments on this item?
No additional comments at this time. Thank you.
Commissioner Lamb-Julian, do you have any comments on this item?
No further comments, thank you.
Commissioner Sandoval, do you have any comments on this item?
No, thank you.
All right, and now it's back to me, and I guess I'd sort of reiterate my previous question as comment, namely that the exact boundaries of what the amnesty is should be made clearer in the public-facing documents to match up with the text of the ordinance itself, and that the ordinance should be amended as we previously discussed. I guess this is somewhere between a question and a comment. How many pages do we expect the pre-submittal questionnaire and checklist to be by the time the city of Pinole is done designing their own? Is it going to be another 13-page checklist, or is it going to, or do you expect something a bit shorter than that?
I think it might be a bit shorter, even just due to formatting, but our officials are making that list, so I'll leave it up to them to check on.
Right, and if I'm reading the text of the ordinance right, the checklist isn't something that's stated explicitly in the ordinance. It's just like that the city can draft and amend as it sees fit because of section E2. Am I right about that?
Yep. Yeah, he's right.
Okay.
So we can amend the checklist is basically, the code just outlines that we are going to have a checklist, and then it allows us to devise a checklist as needed, because there could be building code changes, there could be a number of different changes, and so in the building code. So it allows us to have that flexibility to develop a checklist.
Okay, and then just in terms of the clock for the enforcement delay, so there's a maximum of 5 years of a clock per request, basically. So let's say an owner goes through, there's building inspections done, they request a delay for 5 years. They finish doing the work after 4 years. Code enforcement comes through and they find a new issue that's shown up in that time period or due to the correction or whatever. Does a new 5-year clock start at that point, or are they still on the initial 5-year clock?
If they find another issue related to that ADU, I think they're no longer qualified to be in that program.
Right.
Something along those lines.
You're correct. Yeah, once the corrections are made and the unit becomes a quote legal unit, and then additional things, another complaint comes in, and then it's just a code complaint that goes through our normal code compliance system.
I'm not talking about after it's been finally approved. I'm talking about at the sort of intermediary step where city inspection happens. They say you need to make these corrections in order to qualify. The owner of the unit says, okay, I can't do that right now. I'm going to do it sometime in the next 5 years. And they wait for a few years to do it. And then they make the corrections, and then they call the city back in to confirm that the corrections were done properly. This is before they've completed the amnesty/legalization process. But in the process of that follow-up inspection, the city then finds a new issue, maybe because the building code changed, maybe because settling, maybe because some other random thing. Would the clock for delays restart with that new inspection, or would it still be on the initial 5 years?
I think it should still be on the initial 5 years if they never closed out the.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, if they've never closed it out, then they would still only have the 5 years from the original time they came in to ask for the delay.
Okay, so the only stuff that's going to be going out to 2035 is the stuff that basically came in right at the deadline.
Right.
All right, so in that case, I would like to make a motion to amend Chapter 17.70 as presented on page 26 of this agenda packet to strike the line that says, 1, the owner of an unpermitted junior/accessory dwelling unit has a right to request, strike that line in its entirety, replace the bullet point A with the number 1, replace the bullet point B with the number 2. And this is before we move on to consideration of adoption of the resolution 25-02. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Is there any further discussion of the modification? All right, can we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Utsch,
Yes.
Commissioner Huey,
Yes.
Commissioner Lamb-Julian,
Yes.
Commissioner Sandoval,
Yes.
Commissioner Bender,
Yes.
Vice Chair Martinez,
Yes.
Chairman is.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0 for an amendment to the section. I forget the section number, but the section that was discussed by Chairman is.
All right, so now we have the actual resolution itself. Does anyone else want to make the motion to call forward the resolution with its attached exhibits?
We need somebody to make a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the Planning Commission to support the municipal code amendment, Resolution 25-02, with the Exhibit A, the municipal code amendments.
And that's as amended, right?
Yeah, basically, what we need to say is that you're approving the resolution for the planning commission to recommend to the city council the amendment, the municipal code amendments, the adopt an ordinance amending chapter 17.70 to add accessory dwelling units amnesty program to the Pinole Municipal Code with amendments, with the amendment filed, previously approved.
Okay. Yeah, we adopt a resolution of the City of Pinole Planning Commission recommending that the City Council adopt an ordinance amending Chapter 17.70 to add an accessory dwelling unit amnesty program to the Pinole Municipal Code with the. Oh. Did you hear?
No.
No?
Let's do it one more time, just so we have it on the record.
I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the resolution of the City of Pinole Planning Commission recommending that the City Council adopt an ordinance amending Chapter 17.70 to add an accessory dwelling unit amnesty program to the Pinole Municipal Code with the adjustments that were made to, it was item B under 17.70.070, the amnesty and enforcement delay ordinance for unpermitted ADUs and JADUs. To, if you will, reorganize that one and eliminate the repetition of item number 1.
I'll second that motion. Do we have any further discussion? All right, Mr. Ham, can we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Utsch,
Yes.
Commissioner Huey,
Yes.
Commissioner Lam Julian,
Yes.
Commissioner Sandoval,
Yes.
Commissioner Bender,
Yes.
Vice Chair Martinez,
Yes.
Chairman is.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. I also want some of my other commissioners to get some practice in making the motions.
Yeah.
So we now move on to old business. There is none. New business. There is none. City planner / commissioners report. So let's see. We usually start with the city planners report and then move on to commissioners reports, right? So Mr. Hannum, do you have anything to report for us?
Actually, now that we've approved the amnesty, this program, we'll be taking all the second, third amendments of the zoning housing element implementation zoning amendments that you adopted, plus the amnesty program. We'll be taking that to the council here in March. And so we'll have almost all of our housing implementation for the first 2 years pretty much completed. I've sent the objective development design standards to Justin, and he and I are going to work together to make it pretty so that you guys can put it in its final draft form for everybody to review, and hopefully get that back to you fairly shortly. In terms of development projects, we're working on the final maps for both Appian Village and for the Hazel Street subdivision, the 4 lots on Hazel Street that was adopted about 4 years ago. So those are moving forward. So getting those done. We just sent off the approval for the housing. Just got recorded the housing affordable agreement for Appian Village. So that's part of their final map process. So those projects are moving forward. We're working with Pinole Shores 2 right now. We've got some fire issues that we're working at, but they're working on their building plans to get that project moving. Saha and Vista Woods pretty much are on their final inspections for certificate of occupancies. Saha just got their temporary occupancy permit, so you might see some people moving in here next week or two. And hopefully they signed off on their final. And then Vista Woods, I think there's one issue that they're doing. I've signed off on everything from a planning perspective to get their certificate of occupancy, so we're moving forward to finalizing those 2 projects, which that's a nice addition. Now, the other 3 residential projects Appian Village is moving forward with permits. Hopefully they'll have permits in hand probably in the next 2 months, probably April, May. They'll have permits in hand once they get their final map approved. They have permits in for the first 11 buildings, so 11 out of the 26 they've got permits in for right now. So that's almost half the project. So we're looking forward to that. And then let's see what else. The Parklet program, ad hoc committee, we will be meeting at 1 o'clock on Wednesday to discuss that. So that's moving forward and coming forward. Other than that, in terms of AP and 80, I'm sure if people want to know about that. We hopefully will be meeting with the property owners in the next few weeks to discuss what's going on and what they're doing and how they're doing it. They haven't applied for an application yet. Hopefully we'll get some type of idea of what they're doing and when they plan on doing it. But like I said, those meetings are more confidential. So until they file the application, we're not quite sure what they're going to be doing. We're looking at some uses at the 890 San Pablo. We're meeting with the property owner on that property to look at different alternatives. Also looking at the old Pinole Bank, new business owner, and looking at potentially doing some things there. So a lot of things a lot of little things are starting to happen and starting to boil up. And now that springtime is going to start coming around the corner, people are wanting to know what we can do and what's happening and what's moving on. So hopefully we have another busy entitlement period here in the next 3 or 4 months. Well, hopefully with all the stuff we have going, that just adds to the fray. Other than that, we're still working on the housing element stuff, implementation. We're working. We hired a housing fellow. Justin, is that what it is? Yeah, housing fellow.
Yeah, we have a fellow from the program called Partnership for the Bay's Future. They're with the city for 2 years or so, assisting with various planning projects, mostly housing related. Yeah, so he's working with our community development director to implement a few programs. So he might have a chance to present at Planning Commission one day.
Yeah, so you might see him here. Scary group we have. No. But other than that, yeah, I mean, that's all I have. Unless you have some questions about projects or things that are going on in town, I can hopefully and try to answer those. So that's all I have tonight. Thank you.
Well, I guess I've just got a brief question before we move on to commissioners' reports. The Kmart project, is there any update on that, or is it basically just dead in the water for right now?
Well, we have actually a couple of lot line adjustments that we're completing with that project. So that's kind of moving forward. We are working with them to see. We're probably going to be taking a look at the Kmart to see if it's still viable to stand up. In terms of, they had a lot of roof damage with the last few winters, and I'm sure there's probably some additional. So we could be going out and taking a look at the building. I've got to meet with the building department to check out to see if it's gotten worse and if there's anything they need to do with that building. So, but other than that, in terms of building plans and all that, no, we haven't. It's pretty cold over there right now. They do have their extension until 2026. So the council awarded them that last year. I think, at the end of 2023, I think they gave them that. So they're on a clock for their entitlements. So hopefully they get that moving here in the next year or so. So other than that, yeah. So that's what we're doing with the old Kmart building.
Oh yes, and the BCRE project. Any updates there, or still quiet?
Still kind of quiet. They are hopefully. I know they're working with Justin. So Justin, if you have anything,
they're still on their grading permit.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so they do have a grading permit. They are working on. They are working on that.
All right. Do any of my fellow commissioners have any questions for Mr. Hannon before we move on to commissioner reports? Vice Chair Martinez.
Oh wait, I've got one thing. Before I go, I need to announce something real quick. Let me pull it up. Before I go away. Okay, so basically, here we go. We want your input, everybody's input. With Measure I funds starting to arrive later this year, we're planning how to best use them to support essential services like public safety, roads, and parks. Help us identify community priorities by taking our survey at www.pinole.gov/city-measures, or joining us in person at the Measure I workshop on Saturday, March 1st at 9 a.m. at the Senior Center to share your input directly. So we're having a public workshop for Measure I, March 1st, 9 a.m. Or you can take the survey, or do both, actually. Take the survey and then go to the workshop. So.
And quick question about the workshops. Sorry, Mr. Chairman, yes. But the workshop is in person only, right? It's not going to be broadcast or available in a hybrid format.
Not that I'm aware of. All I know is it's going to be Monday at 9 o'clock, or March 1st at 9 a.m. So I don't know if it's going to be virtual or not. Probably not. It'll probably just be in person.
That's what I thought. All right, over to you, Vice Chair Martinez.
Thank you, Chair. My question is for you, Mr. Hannon. It's related to the work we've been doing at both Appian Village and Vista Woods. There's obviously there's been some major changes to the infrastructure underneath the ground, and in some instances it appears that the contractors doing the work are repairing some of the areas where they're working, and they're also going back with the little seal around it and doing a really job at covering it. Any infrastructure or any road infrastructure that they're changing, they're doing a great job of replacement. However, some of the other contractors that are also doing work in that area are just going in, they're replacing some of the gravel, and they're not taking that extra step of really sealing it up, and the roads are getting progressively worse. Is there anything that we have by way of the approvals during this process to ensure that the quality of the road replacement is at the very best standard we can request of them?
In terms of, I'll just go with Appian Village first. Most of the time, yeah, and normally that happens at the end of the project. So, because there could be connections being made, so normally you'll see the big panels on the street so they can get in and get out. A lot of the stuff you're seeing on San Pablo is not in accordance with Vista Woods. It's just part of a sewer project. It's part of the city. So Vista Woods has finalized all of their quote improvements that they needed to do. Most of theirs was just hooking into the system. They weren't doing any major line upgrades or anything of that nature. So most of it was just tapping into the trunk lines. But what I can do is I can talk to Public Works and see where they are with some of these other projects that they're doing, and making sure that when they leave, that the pavement is at least put back in a manner where it's not breaking up every 2 weeks or every rainstorm. So, and there are just areas of the roads that are just getting bad. I mean, that's kind of and the rain is not making it better. So, Public Works right now, they're in salvage mode right now. I mean, until they get their new director, and then they're going to need a new capital improvements person, and so there's going to be a lot of changes again in Public Works. So hopefully we can address those with some of the inspectors we have now, but I don't see a lot changing until probably the new director comes online and the new project CIP project manager. So. So we'll let them know and make sure they're doing it. But if it was part of the residential project, yes, they would have to go back, reseal. There's still going to be a lot of public infrastructure that has to be done with the Appian Village in terms of putting the traffic signal in. There's going to be a lot of restriping, but a lot of that hasn't occurred yet because they're just in they haven't really pulled the permits yet. And so once the permit starts pulling, they start building the buildings, and you'll start seeing more of those public improvements. But at the end of the day, you'll see some nice paved roads, nice new intersection at both Canyon and at Appian and Man. So, and the rest of their off-site improvements, because they're basically they're just demolishing the old sidewalk and putting all brand new sidewalk in during the whole length of that project. So there's a whole lot of public improvements that still haven't even been completed yet. So in that project, so that'll be an ongoing thing. But the stuff on San Paulo right now, again, those are city projects right now that are being completed.
Excellent. Thank you for the additional information.
All right, are there any other follow-up questions from commissioners to Mr. Hanno about his report? Commissioner Lamb Julian?
About Appian Village, just wondering if the crew would be able to give us or the city a heads up when they're going to be ramping up. Just thinking of the congestion because of the middle school and the management school, and then around the corner is an elementary school. Just so people can prepare a little bit.
Yeah, there will be some notices going up when they start really ramping up. They'll probably start ramping up probably, I want to say May and June. So school might be at the very edge or possibly getting out. But yeah, I mean, we've told them that when you guys, once you get your permits and all that, then you guys need to start noticing, when construction times are and that kind of stuff. So yeah.
Okay, because I also know that the middle school is also usually the summer food drop-off point. So folks from around the school district would come there to pick up meals for their students during the summer.
Okay, but that's like an 11 o'clock mid-morning type of pickup?
Maybe.
Okay, all right.
I'm
Right, well,
completely.
we've told them that they've got to work with, once they start doing that they need to let the school know when they're start moving the big boys on site.
All right, any other follow-up questions to Mr. Hanno's report? All right, so then we're going to go through the commissioner reports, starting with Commissioner Sandoval. Do you have anything to report?
No.
Commissioner Lamb Julian, do you have anything to report?
No.
Vice Chair Martinez, do you have anything to report?
No.
Commissioner Hui, do you have anything to report?
No, thank you.
Commissioner Uch, do you have anything to report?
No.
Commissioner Bender, do you have anything to report?
No.
All right, and I think there's one or two things I have to report. First off, I think the city's going to be doing its usual senior food distribution tomorrow from 10 to 11. It's a little bit unclear in the Pinole Pulse because there's not the usual paragraph, but there is the line item for it. So do we know whether that's happening or not? I
do not know.
I believe that it is, but I'm not 100% certain. That's why I'm sort of raising that at this point. And then the Community Service Commission meeting that would typically be happening this Wednesday has been canceled. And as Mr. Hanno already noted, there's going to be a workshop on Measure I funds, and you can also find out more information on the city's website. And the final slash doesn't necessarily need to be city-measures. You can also put in Measure I, and it'll redirect to that page. And I think that's all of my reports. So do we have any public comments on this item?
Yes, we do. We have one from the caller with phone number ending in 5748. Caller, when you're ready, please press *6 to unmute.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Please state your name and city of residence.
My name's Anthony Washburn, resident of Pinole for over 40 years. It wasn't totally clear on a few things, but when earlier I had asked about the Safeway project, we didn't get a real clear, succinct response from Manager Hannum. After the last meeting, it was just a few days later, if not a week later, I guess he didn't see the meth truck coming, and neither did any of us in the community or anybody in City Hall, except for maybe the city councilman or Mayor Devin Murphy and or Cameron Sasai dropped the bomb that said Safeway Albertsons has totally removed themselves from the project, and so the city is back to square one. Is one big black eye for Pinole now, I guess, but they didn't use that word, I guess, but without reason. So number one, you know, that was just like a few days after you announced, well, we're going to go into a meeting in the next week. But I guess you're not privy to that information like City Council, Mr. Hannum. But did they give you or you hear of any real reason why they pulled out? Because nobody said what the reason was, whether they wanted a delay. But I think it had to do partially with maybe not so much the financing, because Albertsons has a lot of money, or the merger, that the Kroger merger didn't go through, but the fact they couldn't get their 16 or 18 pump station gas lot there, which was one of the major must-haves with the Albertson company. So, you know, we might face that again down the road, but I guess with the new city council and mayor as of last year, they put a kibosh on any gas station build-outs. But in hindsight, you know, it was like a trifecta. I think the city should have been more proactive in following the project with Safeway Albertsons, as well, more so the city council and the people in charge of the city, the mayor then, and now they're all the same. They should have been more open to different things, like past Mayor Pete Murray, city councilman had mentioned, and I echoed that same idea, was why couldn't we go back to them, Safeway Albertsons, and ask them to put you know, half the amount of EV stations up there with the gas stations, so it'd be a win-win for the city of Pinole, or put some kind of extended moratorium on that no gas edict build-out, which they grandfathered Valero Union 76, 7-Eleven stations in after 4 or 5 years of trying to get the right permits to get the lights turned on there. They could have done something like that for Safeway if they would agree to it. But what was the reason for that? Also, so we're looking for a major tenant there, and we gave away all that tax money to Costco Gas and Hercules Safeway Gas instead. And so we don't have no anchor tenant in that major property there. So the rumor is maybe it might end up to go all to housing, and then you people will be busy. Also, had you heard anything about the senior center? Did they have to pull permits for that yet? Supposedly, we're going to be out $250,000 plus for a new HVAC system and a brand new roof for the whole senior center. That was another big surprise. And supposedly, several years ago, against the old city council and Mayor Roy Swarjan, he had said he opted to opt out on getting the roof fixed or complete the roof then.
You have 30
well,
seconds
maybe
remaining.
he should have revisited now, because now the price is probably doubled, if not tripled. You do a $100,000 roof and a $152,000 HVAC system there. And what is happening to the Faria House property, or what property was being sold on the block at 900 San Pablo, because they had something to do with a city council meeting last week, and nothing was said about that. Was the Faria House sold, or is being sold now, and any other
can you go
vacant
ahead and wrap
properties?
up at this
and
point?
Caretaker's house, the status of that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments?
There are no other comments.
All right. So one brief reply I have to that is that the status of the caretaker's house, I think, is going to be one of the things discussed at the workshop, because I know it's one of the potential action items listed on the city's Measure I page. So that might be worth looking into. And can we go ahead and have the Zoom do the proper audio cutoff? Great, thanks. And with regards to the Safeway project, as I understood it, they could have still built the originally entitled project with the gas station, but they let that permit expire. Is that the case?
Yeah, so let me just try to explain this one last time. The Hillsborough property was the property owner who owned Safeway, the Safeway property for 30, 40 years. They came to the city for the Pinole Square project. That was the Pinole Square project. They got all their entitlements improved, including the gas station, the fast food pad, as well as the outdoor dining, everything for their project. That entitlement, the Hillsborough property people sold it to Balboa Properties. Balboa Properties let the entitlement go away. So there is no entitlement, there is no plan, there is nothing, at least from an application standpoint or design review standpoint, with the Safeway. Safeway, we did not, everybody really was kind of taken aback from the Safeway. We didn't know. That was more of customers who were going to Safeway, found out that with the notice on the door that they were closing, they notified City Hall, and then we did as much as we could in the time that we had. We don't have control over what Balboa does with their property at this point, in terms of their tenants, in terms of their tenant agreements, in terms of everything they do. We don't have a say in it. We're not at the table, because those are private matters that the businesses have to take care of. Just like Bank of America point out, we did not know that Bank of America, again, that was a lease issue with Balboa Properties, and that's between the Bank of America and Balboa Properties. The city gets involved. Where the city gets involved is if properties start becoming blighted and all that type of stuff. And example, we've done a lot of code enforcement over there regarding, you've seen the fencing go up to block the trucks. That's kind of more of our mode at this point. Until they come to the table with a project, we have to kind of sit back and kind of say, okay, when you come, then we can talk and we can, but because of Safeway, I mean, that's a huge deal in terms of that community, Terre Hills community. And so we are asking to get a meeting with them. We thought we had a meeting planned, however, the last month. However, because of vacations, because of people who needed to be in the meeting and all that weren't available. And so the meeting got rescheduled and that. So we are working with Balboa Properties to kind of get an idea of what their plan is, try to get an idea of what their plan is, and when they're going to submit, or if there's going to be submitting within the next year or so. And that's really all we can really do. We can't just go and say, you get a project over here now and get this done. They've got to figure out what they want to do with the property. So once they have done their due diligence and have figured out what they want to do with the property, then they'll come see us. And then at that point, then we can react and that. So, I mean, we know that we need a grocer in that area. There's no question about that. So, and I know that's something that we're working, we're trying to work even from an economic development standpoint of now that Safeway's going, who's out there, who's potential. And I'm sure Balboa is doing the same thing in terms of they don't want an empty storefront, especially 80,000, 90,000 square feet of empty building, including the CVS. So we are working with them. We are trying to at least get them back to the table to see what's happening. And we'll when we can let the public know, we will let the public know. So I know we really got out those notices pretty fast once we figured out. We got it in the Pulse, we got it on our website, we got it moving. So everything that we can do and say, we will get out there. Regarding the gas station moratorium, yes, there cannot be any more new gas stations. A moratorium. There is no longer any new gas stations that are allowed as part of the city of Pinole. Was that part of the deal? Safeway moving away? I don't know. I was not in the negotiations with Safeway and Balboa to know if that was the trigger that told Safeway to close. So again, we're working with Balboa and getting them kind of to what's going on and doing that. So other than that, that's all I really have. So we don't know a plan. We don't know what's going on at this point. Which then the Faria House, I know the Faria House I think is on the market. I'm not positive about that, and I don't know if they have a buyer. So if there was something on the closed session, I'm not quite sure what that was all about. That would have been with the department head level and our consultant RSG, who helps us with the property sales and economic development standpoints. Thank you.
right, commissioners, do you have any comments or responses you want to make to the public comment? All right, so we will now move on to communications, going in the opposite direction this time. So Commissioner Sandoval, do you have any communications you wish to make at this time?
No.
Commissioner Lam-Julian, do you have any communications you wish to make at this time?
No, thank you.
Vice Chair Martinez, do you have any communications you wish to make at this time?
No.
Commissioner Hui, do you have any communications you wish to make at this time?
No.
Commissioner Ooze, do you have any communications you wish to make at this time?
No.
Commissioner Bender, do you have any communications you wish to make at this time?
No.
All right, and I actually do have a communication. I noticed as part of the last council meeting with regards to I think it was the PAL adoption, that there was going to be an outreach process sort of going on with regards to what actually needs to be permitted and whether you need to get, say, a permit for a window replacement or a door replacement or even weather stripping. And what I was curious about is, would it be possible for the Planning Commission to sort of have like an informative item, have like Director Wayland say come in and explain like, these are the various things you need to get permits for, this is why, that sort of thing? Because I think a lot of people probably just don't know they need to get permits for certain things or what all the things may cover. So I think it would perhaps be helpful for the commission to consider that.
Okay, well, what I can do is I'll talk to Director Whaley and also building official Keith Marks, and maybe have Keith come in and kind of as our building official and have him, if the commission wants, or he'll give me the information, I can forward it to you. So, yeah, we can do that.
Right, so I guess that's sort of a motion for a future agenda item. Do I have a second?
Well, second.
All right, and we can't really do discussion, I don't think, since this isn't an agendized item, but roll call, please.
Commissioner Sandoval.
Yes.
Commissioner Lam-Julian.
Yes.
Commissioner Huey.
Yes.
Commissioner Utch.
Yes.
Commissioner Bender.
Yes.
Vice Chair Martinez.
Yes.
Chair Minnis.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0 to bring an item regarding the PAL program.
Right, and various building permit requirements.
And various building permit requirements.
All right, that's all of my communications. So our next meeting is going to be I assume, our regular meeting of March 10th, 2025 at 7 p.m. And I will now adjourn the meeting. Thank you.